The majority culture, I suppose.
And what's majority culture?
The people with power.
And who's people with power?
People with power.
He's gonna say it.
White
Say it.
people?
Say it. Say it.
Say
Say the
it.
Jews. He wants to say the Jews.
I don't think a particularly
Keep asking
white,
questions.
quote-unquote, interest controls things like
In America.
pop culture.
He totally means the Jews. He 1000% means the Jews. Holy sh. So conservatives have been, so I noticed when looking kind of like, you know, when trying to produce the show, I was looking to see what the conservatives were whining about. It's kind of the easiest way to see what they're on about these days. But I noticed they were, a lot of the Daily Wire boys were really interested in some based Asian guy in a suit, you know, clapping back at the woke liberal blue-haired whatevers. You know, based on the very minimal information, I'm going to go with the, you know, fairly obvious takeaway from this, which is a person who was not white said all the things that conservatives say. So naturally, they're all jumping on that to, try to be like, hey, there we go. We finally got a non-white to agree with us. That's great. Which, you know, there's always going to be a few. Conservative values are rather prominent in in immigrant communities to a degree. It's not universal, but there is, like, when we talk about people coming from less liberalized countries, there's gonna be a lot of conservative values. If you have immigrant families, I'm sure, you know, there's a certain amount of like conservative traditional culture that like your parents or your grandparents want to hold on to. But, you know, if you're younger, if you were raised in America, you probably have assimilated a lot into that, and there's like elements of your, like, you know, your immigrant family's culture that you still hold on to, but kind of also meld that into your American identity. But, you know, there's always somebody who's stepping up and still kind of perpetuating conservative values, even if it's, you know, even if it's from a different country's lens or a different culture's lens. Conservatives in America will jump on anything the same way they do conservative Cubans who come here and whine about the system there and, you know, talk about all the shortcomings, which, by the way, are also not really there's a rather big part to play that we play as the United States in Cuba's current situation in terms of their economics and the way their society has been structured, since, you know, embargoes and sanctions have not allowed the country to actually develop and enter into the modern economy. There's a reason why they're still driving cars from 1950, but that means there's also a reason why they have a lung cancer vaccine, along with basically solving blindness in their country. Cuba, there's a lot of problems with Cuba, but when we talk about, like, you know, when people bring up Cuba, there's quite a lot of context that they leave out. But anyway, oh, you mean that Asian? Yeah, I thought you meant that you were Asian. That's not it. No. No, there was, yeah, I guess he showed up on Vice or something. They, you know, Vice trying to do their best Jubilee impression. But no, I am possibly indigenous South American. I have no idea. I'm just American, to be honest with you. It's mostly what I identify as, because I don't really have a biological ability to really track my biology. So I'm adopted. It's fine. It doesn't bother me one bit. Anyway, let's take a look. I want to hear what the fuck is going on with this.
See Chuck Schumer, the entire
okay, no.
Democrat,
We're good. Okay, that's not as loud as I thought it was.
Bent the knee to George Floyd into Black Lives. Like, they quite literally did that.
And that was a bad thing?
Okay, so can I ask why this person looks like Charlie Kirk? Honest to God, they look like they have the same, like, square head, kind of small, like, no? Like, am I crazy?
I think it was a stupid thing.
My dude looks like George Floyd. My dude looks like Charlie Kirk. All right, we're turning this down just a little bit more. I love this person's hair. It's a fun color.
Are they filming us for, like, B-roll?
Stand by. All right, here we go. You guys feeling ready?
It's happening.
Hi, and welcome to our conversation about what it means to be Asian American. I'm Krishna. My parents came here from India. I was born here. So I identify as South Asian American or Asian American. And I just wanted to call out that, we're talking about the largest continent on the planet with multiple countries, ethnicities, sub-ethnicities within it. So we did our best to try to get a diverse mix of opinions and backgrounds on this panel, but you can't get everyone's opinion. So as we start, I want to get a quick poll. How many of you guys think the term Asian American is useful? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Is it literally everybody but that one
What about if
guy?
you were to add Asian American Pacific Islander? I guess I'm curious to hear why, and maybe the way we can do that is going around the room and talking about who we are, where we came from, and what that term means to us, and what you think it might mean to the rest of the world. So,
I'm Yuling, and I would identify myself
Oh
as
my God,
Asian
everyone's
American.
talking
I feel
like-
really strongly about
I'm only
being,
at
an immigrant
1.25.
first gen, or
What is
I say
everybody
first and
Ben
half gen,
Shapiro?
because I was born in China, and then we immigrated to New York and then to San Francisco. And I think that like the term Asian American,
Man.
it's complicated because it applies to so many different identities, ethnicities, and cultures.
It's very unspecific. Unfortunately, there's a certain in terms of demographics, there is a certain amount of I think vague and broadness that is useful when it comes to demographic categorization. But yeah, the problem, these lines that are drawn are so fucking broad. If we're talking about African Americans, we're literally counting people who are from America, of African descent, but then we're also talking about people who are from Africa who then immigrated to America, and from Africa is a fucking huge continent. So it's very unspecific.
It's a helpful term when you don't really know what else to you kind of just lump everybody into one term.
It's
And
useful
I
for
don't
the
think there's any
census.
issue with it being Asian American and Pacific Islander either, because that's just more inclusive in my opinion.
so there's a sense of community amongst people from different cultures.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you can't really put it into words. It's applicable to such a wide range of things, and
Is it
we're not
mostly
monolithic.
It's complex.
Yes.
Pacific?
Yeah.
Do Australians identify themselves as Pacific Islanders? I just thought about this because if you say Pacific Islander, I'm thinking my mind is thinking okay, Hawaii, Japan, Samoa, Taiwan, I'm thinking kind of those regions, but in my mind I wouldn't count Australia, mainly because Australia is England prison, but I guess technically that what it should that Australians should be Pacific Islanders, I would presume, but I don't know what Australians identify as.
I was born in Manila, Philippines.
Interesting. And what does that heritage mean to you?
You know,
Philippines,
I'm a
yeah,
little
Philippines another one.
Because sometimes I just want to be American. I don't want to specify the fact that I'm Asian, but at the same
Just be
time,
American,
it's
bro.
Someone looks at you,
You're
they're gonna
allowed.
say that you're Asian, so you say you're Asian American. I don't like the idea of separating the Pacific Islander just because for so long I was told I wasn't Asian, that I was a Pacific Islander. I just think it's all encompassing we are Asian.
Micah.
I feel very prideful about the Asian Pacific Islander. I live in San Diego now, but I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and my dad's born and raised from Kona. I am so close with my family. Just growing up, it's hard to explain, but being from Hawaii, the Aloha spirit is real. Being around your family, having that common courtesy for community is just something that I'm really proud of.
And you feel like as
So according to this, what the fuck? Okay, wait. Okay, Pacific Islander. Here we go. Cool. Pacific Islander people are spreading throughout the, oh my God, this is not what I wanted. Give me just Pacific Island countries. Oh, okay, here we go. Let's see. Pacific Islanders. Okay, so technically, yeah. Okay, Melanesians. Okay, Fiji makes sense. Papua New Guinea, New Caledonia, okay. Micronesians, Carolinians, North. Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So this does mostly count then. Yeah. New Zealand, Polynesians include New Zealand, Native. God damn. Yeah. You say Pacific Islander, and you're just okay. 1 second here. Let me. You say Pacific Islanders, and it's all this shit going on here. All of this. It's a lot of, yeah, you got Hawaii. Fuck yeah, you got Samoa, Tonga, fucking Cook Islands. Okay, but yeah, okay, so they do identify. So yeah, interesting. Okay, I was kind of curious because I was like, I feel like because I feel like Australians we always think of as like, yeah, they're like southern like Brits or whatever, they're South Englands, but like, okay, if it's like more of, okay, well, that's cool, that's good. I don't know if I'd want to live in these in the Polynesian, although Polynesian areas are kind of nice, but hot as fuck. Anyway, I was just kind of curious about that.
As it relates to Asian American and Pacific Islander, these are two things that kind of go together in some ways.
Yeah, they do.
How?
So the thing about Hawaii is that it's a really huge collection of different types of ethnicities, and there's a lot of Asian influence in Hawaii as well. A lot of different people who are there are from Korea, China, Japan, and so I just consider them family as well.
Well, good to meet you. Tell me about your.
I just thought about this. Like, there are Americans who identify as Caucasian. They're like, but you've got quite a few generations before you have any connection to the Caucasus. So there's also that. And it's like, well, like, do we count like Pacific Islander in with Asia and everything else? But like, I can't help but think like, well, I mean, we count Hawaii and like Alaska in as American. So I'm like, I don't think like land borders. I feel like it's more of like a kind of cultural similarity to a degree, because like the kind of food you're gonna eat in somewhere like Beijing, and then somewhere like I don't know, I can't in like Bangkok, and like somewhere in Japan, and like somewhere in Tonga are probably gonna be like kind of similar, like kind of food and kind of similar cultures with their differences, but like kind of a little bit similar than if you contrasted them with more North American societies, like if you're talking like Mexico, Canada, and the US. Like, even though those three are three very different countries with three different cultures, you'd probably find a lot more degrees of separation between those two groups than like internally in those groups.
Yourself, Vince?
Genetically, I'm a quarter Italian, 75.
Oh, this makes all the fucking sense in the world. This fucker's from Florida. No fucking wonder. Also, yeah, I stand by my point. This dude does look like fucking... Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? God, man. There's like, is it just like a fucking, like, is it a fucking, where's like the, no, I don't want to find the Photoshop one. No, I don't want to find, no. Where's the one? We'll just, here, we'll go with, God, every picture of Charlie looks hilarious to me. It always looks funny to me. Like, come on now. Like, come on now. Come on now. It feels like cosplay to me. Anyway, man, I tell you, man, Florida just does something. I swear, Florida just does something to you, man.
5% Vietnamese, but I am really with Teddy Roosevelt on this one. I don't believe in the hyphenated American thing. I identify as American. I consider myself an American. Sure, genetically, I'm mostly Asian. I don't go around thinking I'm an Asian American, because I think that, especially considering the fact that America today is increasingly a more and more diverse country, which is what it is, the only way that's going to hold together is if people can, to some extent, all identify as being part of the same nation, part of the same creed to an extent. I mean, that's just the way I would view it.
Vish, you're up.
I'm 100% Hindu Indian American. I was born in Brooklyn. My parents are from India. I personally just describe myself as American.
Mm-hmm.
I find, like Vince said, the hyphenated American thing, I think it's by definition divisive when you're dividing the identity. I prefer to call myself American. I don't call myself Indian American, Asian American, though when people ask.
I found the Roosevelt quote, the Teddy Roosevelt quote specifically. I kind of want to read this really quickly. There is no... Okay, here, we'll stop over real quick. There is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. When I refer to hyphenated Americans, I do not refer to naturalized Americans. Some of the very best Americans I have ever known were naturalized Americans born abroad. But a hyphenated American is not an American at all. quote, this is okay. This is just as true of the man who puts native before the hyphen as of the man who puts German or Irish or English or French before the hyphen. Americanism is the matter of the spirit and of the soul. Our allegiance must be purely to the United States. We must unsparingly condemn any man who holds any other allegiance. I feel like this is not the quote this is not like the let's all come together quote that he thinks it is. But if he is heartily and singly loyal to his republic, then no matter where he was born, he is just as good as an American as anyone else. The one absolutely certain way of bringing the nation to ruin, of preventing all possibility of its continuing to be a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities, an intricate knot of German Americans, Irish Americans, English Americans, French Americans, Scandinavian Americans, Italian Americans, each preserving its separate nationality, each at heart feeling more sympathy with Europeans of the nationality that with the other citizens of the American Republic. The men who do not become Americans and nothing else are hyphenated Americans, and there ought to be no room in them in this country. The man who calls himself an American citizen and who yet shows by his actions that he is primarily the citizen of a foreign land plays a thoroughly mischievous part in the life of our body politic. He has no place here. The sooner he returns to the land which he feels his real heart allegiance, the better it will be for every good American. Teddy Roosevelt. Lovely. How do I put this? I get what he's saying. Also, it's called freedom. I'm gonna roll with the freedom one on here. If you want to go by whatever American, I don't care. And I don't really think it's damaging. At the end of the day, the United States has always been a mishmash, a cobbled together coalition of different cultures and different peoples coming together under one conception, which is being an American, believing in freedom and all the rest of that stuff. The actual people who don't, I find the people who constantly want to tell people to get out of the country or to not bring their culture or whatever else are going to be the true Americans that also I don't want to hear about. See, this also cuts both ways. If we're gonna do like the hey, like what if we didn't identify by like the nationality that we might have come from before we came here, or even like our biological makeup, as this guy states it. What if we don't do that? That's fine. That if we want to say that's not cool, then that's totally fine. But I don't want to hear real American. I don't want to hear true American. I don't want to hear any of this MAGA American bullshit. Either we're all American or we're all just a coalition of people who are American. But like, we can't have this one way and not the other. There is no version of this where it's like, oh no, you can't bring your culture, but I'm gonna do I'm a real American. No. That's not how this works.
Ask like, oh, well, what are you? I'll say, well, I'm of Indian heritage, but I was born in Brooklyn.
Yes.
I probably identify as Asian American. I also like.
How do you live with these
my mom is
orange, these like yellow lenses?
So I do truly feel that I am a part of the Asian American experience.
Like mine are like slightly green, but
at home, it's a Japanese household. It's a Japanese culture because I was predominantly also raised by my mom too. And then also we happen to live in America. And I think there is a very unique perspective in that. As well as I'm a proud Asian American, I'm a proud Black American too. I'm a proud biracial American. And I think there is definitely also a need for us to be able to say Asian American, especially because we are often seen as not American or not American enough. But then you go back to Asia and they're like, oh, you're so American. So it's just like, well, who am I?
Being between cultures in a way, or straddling cultures, being part of two cultures.
Yeah, being part of two cultures.
It is rather
I'm
contextual.
Asian, I'm American. I'm Asian American.
Well, nice to meet you. Joyce.
So I'm a Taiwanese Asian American. I identify as Asian American, but at the same time, I think the term Asian American and
also these demographics are useful for like identifying like problems in society. There's also like there is a functional like use for demographic categorization. Like aside from like the societal, like how do we get along sort of bullshit, there is like a usefulness to being able to identify issues within a specific ethnic group or ethnic group or racial group. But I think that goes without saying.
Islander, they have to be separated because when we go to colleges and apply to get in, we're on different socioeconomic pathways. So actually the term Asian Pacific Islander would actually get you in more than someone just does East Asian, because I believe now.
Oh, here's the easy solution to that one. Socialized college education.
I guess this is a funny question, but like, do you think
college for all. There, we fixed it.
When meeting you, would be like, oh yeah, you're Taiwanese.
No, they think I'm Chinese. Japanese or Korean, but basically I'm Asian. They always ask where am I from because of the way I look.
And they ask like, where are you really from?
Yes, yes. And I'm like, always, I'm American.
I've heard that before.
Too. Ellen.
Hi, my name
I
is
love the, but
Ellen.
where are you
I'm
really from?
Korean American. I came from Korea when I was 8 years old, got on a plane by myself, not speaking a word of English. Didn't know white people were real.
Fucking wild, dude.
For me, it was huge culture shock. My parents had already immigrated, so I was joining them. I like to be identifying myself as a Korean American woman, and I recognize the importance of Asian American Pacific Islander. Definitions are always constantly changing as we as society constantly evolving.
Oh my God, a reasonable take.
I don't myself American because when anybody in this country looks at me, they don't just see American. They always see
Which
Asian
is a problem
first.
with like our
Instead of using that as a
like at the end of the day, like that is like a thing. Like the Irish and like the Irish and the Italians were not like white Americans for a long time. For a long time, black people weren't even Americans. They were property. So like you can't just turn around and be like, oh yeah, why can't we all just be American now? It's like, well, there are quite a few structures and like socially learned like biases and like and mindsets that you would have to dismantle. Like you would have to convince the like regular ass American in like Kansas that like this woman in like Washington or like her in California are like as American. Like how many times do we hear like the keep America for Americans? And then you ask, what does that mean? And then they go, well, my family's been here since like 1776. And then you're like, oh, all right, like cool. Like are you from like what were they from somewhere else? Because like unless you're indigenous, you're not originally from here to begin with. So even then, I'm like, you're not even from the Americas originally, my guy. Like my people been running around for bricks longer than you. So like, what are we talking here? Like, there's so much more to any of like the like how we identify. It's why like if somebody's like, I'm Korean American, it's like, all right, cool, that sounds good. Like we're just not there yet. Like there's a segment of society, conservatives mostly, who like have no interest. Like what do you do when one of the parties, there's two parties in this country and only one of them gets a significant count of the non-white vote? Like what do you do in this scenario? One party has been based on a rather racist conception and approach to politics. So of course we don't get along. Of course we can't come together under one American identity. There's an entire like what's the word I'm looking for? There's an entire half of the political spectrum in America that like doesn't recognize people of like Middle Eastern descent as Americans because they believe that Islam is what's what I'm looking for is like can't function, or like you can't assimilate as somebody who comes from an Islamic background into America because they're two opposing ideologies when they have almost nothing to do with each other. Like
thing that holds me back, I say it proudly, and it's taken time to accept my identity, to really know that that's sort of an umbrella term to open the door into the conversation. I know it's not possible to encompass all of us because Asia's so big, right? But in order for us to be seen and heard, we have to start somewhere. So I think it's a good term for that.
Ziad.
I'm Ziad. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Bangladeshi American, and I'm
Oh
Asian
wow, I
American.
wouldn't have guessed that.
The reason why I, is lukewarm about the term Asian American insofar as its
Bangladesh seems
usefulness
like a cool
is that
country.
I don't actually often refer to myself as Asian American, despite like fully believing that I am, because to Yuling's point, oftentimes I think people have a perception of what Asian American looks like, right? And sometimes that leaves out South Asian.
This
Sometimes
dude's
that leaves out
shaking his
Central
head.
Asians.
This dude's
Sometimes that
shaking
leaves
his
out
head in the
huge parts of
background, like
world.
he's
Me
like,
personally,
no,
like, I
no,
lean into
no.
my hyphenated identity,
No,
right?
I don't know what that
American,
looks
and I
like.
am
Like, yes,
Muslim,
you
and I am
do. Shut the
Bangladeshi, and
fuck
I am
up.
Asian, right? And I am all of these things at once, and I'm not one more
Disgust.
than the other, but I take
Utter
pride
disgust.
in all of these things. And I think that for me, I find power in that insofar as when I look at this country, I think it is so damaging, right? So saddening that sometimes this country makes us choose.
I mean, what you point out is that we kind of all have a dual consciousness or are dual citizens of this country and the world, which is to say we go home, we might have a different culture, a different food, a different language that we speak. We go to school and we have friends who might not share or understand what that language culture is.
Isn't that
and we
like
have a desire to
the
both
cool
be
part of
true
America?
to the heritage, but then also be accepted, successful, and otherwise in the non-Asian American world that we live in. Assimilation. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a burden? Is it an opportunity?
Assimilation, I think I would define that as, in part, I think necessary to an extent because we are forced to in order to navigate this country. So I would say learning the language, learning how to like properly behave, for example. That's in part kind of assimilation, making sure that you are
In line.
kosher in this society. And I think in part that means survival.
I think assimilation is not just a great thing, it's a necessary thing.
Huh.
No society can
Naturally.
hold together where people have nothing in common, they don't speak the same language, they don't practice the same.
I hate this. I fucking hate this. I hate the idea that like this dude comes on here to be like, oh, we can't get along if we don't have anything in common. Oh, what's the thing we don't have in common? Like you speak Spanish in your like household and my family speaks like English, and it's like, all right, that's like one difference. Like, do you hear any of this in Europe where they have like where they have very lax, not just immigration, but like travel, like I'm trying to think of the word, like policies. Like if you live in the EU, you can freely travel between EU countries. Like, so it's like, wait, what's the what? We can't all get along because you go home and because I go home and speak Spanish. Just for the record, I don't. But like I might do that and you go home and speak English and the guy next to you might go home and go speak like German. Like I had a friend growing up where his mom, like his dad was like an American, like just a pure American. I think he was like from, I don't know, the Midwest or some shit, but his mom was like German. And whenever I went over to his house, I would hear like his mom would make German food. I would hear his mom like speak German to him and like in our vicinity. And it was like kind of cool. Like I didn't have any German family members. My grandmother was like half Russian, I think, or some shit, but like she didn't speak the language. Nobody in my family spoke anything except for English. But then when I went over to one of my other friends' houses, his family was Mexican American. So like, they spoke a lot of Spanish, but they also knew English and would like speak English for probably it's like a 50-50 or maybe like even a 40, like honestly, probably more like a 35-65. Is that it? Yeah, 35-65. Yeah, like a 35-65 in favor of English with some Spanish in there. Like this is like the unique and cool thing about America. That like you don't go to somebody's house and it's just like your house. You get like you can experience all these cultures, all these different like ways of like being. Like I don't see what's the bad part. We get along. We all agree on a lot of things. There's just like he says like, oh, we don't agree on anything. Like that's bullshit. That's utter fucking bullshit. Any political polling would tell you most Americans across many races and ethnicities agree on a lot of fucking shit. Like a lot of stuff, more than you would think.
You may look at something like just food habits or what you eat and think that's fairly frivolous. But the truth of the matter is that on a broader level, when we're talking about more big picture things, differences in race, culture, religion, all these things, people have fought wars, violent wars, killed each other over these things for thousands of years.
Cool.
If America is to hold together, assimilation, not just good or bad, necessary. I don't think it's going to be possible for America to.
First of all, back then, people were fighting wars over. First of all, people were fighting in tribal like race and ethnicity wars because they were fighting over like meager resources. The resource distribution back then was basically your tribe eat or their tribe eat, but that was it. And like the only way you identified who was in your tribe was usually, at least from in the beginning, by what fucking color they were, because you rolled with the same same looking people. We've developed, we've advanced. We live in 2023. This isn't applicable to the United States.
To survive as a stable, functioning society, if people don't, to some degree, say, well, here's what we're going to commonly agree upon.
But who gets to choose it?
The majority culture, I suppose.
And what's
The people-
majority culture?
The people with power.
And who's people with power?
People with power.
He's gonna say it.
White
Say it.
people?
Say
Oh,
it.
I don't
Say
know
it.
if that's-
Say the Jews. He wants to say the Jews.
It's okay.
I don't know if that's necessarily so true. I mean,
He doesn't know if that's necessarily true. I've never heard such cowardice. Dude, just fucking say it. Dude, just say we need, no, oh man, this makes so much sense why Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh loves this guy. So much sense.
Wait, can you
look
unpack?
at,
Yeah.
Let's elaborate.
I don't think a particularly
Keep asking
white,
questions.
quote-unquote, interest controls
Uh-huh.
things like
In America.
pop culture.
He totally means the Jews. He 1000% means the Jews. Holy shit. Because he's like, I don't think it's necessarily white people. They might think they're white people. Oh, man. Holy shit. We found it, guys. We fucking found it. We found Asian Hitler.
White supremacy exists?
I think there are people who believe in it. I think there's people who all believe that their race is superior.
So you don't believe in white supremacy?
Do you believe America is a white supremacist state?
No, not at all.
And not found
No
by-
white supremacist state would even allow us to be doing this. I don't
Huh? No white. Wait. The argument isn't that it is a totalitarian white supremacist state. The argument is that there's systems in place that reinforce white hegemony. God, I hate saying that word. The white hegemon. That's what I'm going to say from now on. I'm not going to ever say hegemony again because it fucks me up. I'm just going to say the hegemon every time.
don't understand. So white supremacists, there's just KKK people walking. Actually, I go around New York City. I notice that, I guess Brooklyn a little bit different. Most of the people here are not white, and they're doing their thing. So I don't understand.
What does doing their thing mean to you?
Going to work.
Are they making the same amount of money? Are they getting the same access to opportunities?
Damn, bro! I'm not gonna lie. Fucking all the fucking rightoids were on not Facebook, probably on Facebook, but all of them were on YouTube. Oh yeah, conservative crush the liberal. Dude, this dude's getting blown the fuck out.
They're getting great access to opportunity.
Please unpack it. Are they equivalent?
Bro, I fucking love this dude from Bangladesh.
Communities that are
Oh, amazing.
Because you point to popular culture as something where, in your view, white people don't have the power. When the reality is, it is the white executives who are profiting off of and exploiting predominantly black and brown bodies
Fucking get him.
Financial gain to then parade to us and tell us that we're thriving. When the reality is, it is women of color, and it is black folks, and it is Asian American folks, and it is Hispanic folks, and it is people from marginalized communities who are disproportionately being impacted by every adverse thing that society is facing. While the few at the top who don't represent our communities, our profit.
He's thinking, yeah, the Jews. He's thinking, yeah, the Jews, absolutely.
All of these things.
Also, if he thinks the Jews run everything, why wouldn't you advocate for Jewish supremacy? Do you ever notice that? Do you ever notice that the guys who obviously JQ will be oh, we should defer to the main powerful cultural the main cultural force in the country, and then you're who's that? And he's is it white people? And he's well, I don't think maybe not, not exactly white people. And it's oh, so it's the Jews, right? But it's oh, so which culture should we all be more Jewish? Should we be going to temple and reading the Torah and everything else? And they go, well, no, that's not that's not, I'm saying normal American culture. And it's always a way to always somehow, all roads always lead back to Western specific cis white, cis white culture. That's what it always heads back to, even though white at the end of the day, as we've discussed before, doesn't actually mean anything. It's a constantly shifting definition in terms of who is white. Remember, the Italians and the Irish were not white, not until much later until they were folded into white identity, which was really only an attempt to undermine a labor organization, between blacks and whites, specifically the Irish and the Italians.
Shouldn't exist.
Well, nobody denies that there's disparities or that.
Well, let's have Vince.
No.
I think the question is, do they exist because of supposed white supremacy? And when I look at the fact that virtually every corporation and institution,
right,
bends
he's
the
going
knee
to do it.
Diversity celebrates every single Heritage Month. Has all these programs. Every single
capitalism.
One toe the line for Black Lives
Capitalism.
Matter. I don't look at that.
What is toe the line?
I don't look at that.
First of all, he's a dipshit. The answer to the first part is capitalism. The answer to the George Floyd, I want to hear.
Say conservative white people are in power in this country. As a matter of fact, I'd argue to a large extent, you can talk about what race or whatever people are, but is like a supposedly conservative white interest in power in America. I would honestly say I think it's the opposite of that.
I want to clarify one.
Well, if we go and look at, if you would like to look at who is in Congress right now, who is making and enforcing the laws, I don't know if he knows this, but there's a party. It's called the Conservative Republican Party. They currently hold a majority in the House of Representatives. They are represented by, and I don't even need to look up the numbers, I'm fine with saying, a majority of white folks. When we talk, like an entire half of our political spectrum, the Republican Party, the conservative end of American politics, is represented almost exclusively by white people. And you can't say they don't hold the levers of power because, come on, they're the one writing and making the laws. Would you like to look at who's running most of the Fortune 500 companies? Would you like to find out who's running Wall Street? Do you know what Michael Bloomberg looks like? Do you know what Mark Zuckerberg looks like? Do you know what Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, any of these guys look like? Do you know how, they're obviously products of the system that has put people who look like them in a position to succeed at the maximal level. Now, again, I've said it before, I don't really, there's a certain part of the system that I think is mostly based around wealth accumulation, right? Like at the end of the day, the system favors whoever has the most amount of money, whoever's already in first place, right? Now, that just so happens to be white people in this scenario. At the end of the day, this would be the case in almost any country, anywhere around the world, under capitalism. Money and capital ownership, power will always be consolidated to the top because the goal of capitalism, the edict of capitalism, is wealth creation and wealth and domination through that wealth. So, when we talk about systems that when we talk about systems of oppression, specifically white supremacist systems, or what quite frankly favor white people, it's not really about it's white people. That's not really what it's about. What it's about is the fact that it's favoring people. I don't care so much if the system favors white people or black people. I don't want a system that favors either group. I want a system that's fair to everybody. But we can't do that if we're constantly having people who come up and be like, oh well, all the people who not all the people who are holding power are actually white. I think it's mostly the liberals and all of the activists who because Walmart sold a Black Lives Matter sign. Obviously, Black Lives Matter is running the country. No, get the fuck out of here. Don't give me this bullshit.
One thing, you can be liberal and still a white supremacist, right?
Yes.
I would be very clear,
Absolutely.
right? That it doesn't necessarily mean conservative white power is the predominant folks in power. I think it could span a lot of political ideologies and still have these things embedded in how you govern and how you lead and how you make decisions. However, when you talk about bending the knee, that is a wild way, I think, to look at society finally trying in some ways to right the wrongs of its
It's not so
ills.
wild. I mean, even like your supposedly white politicians, you look at what they did in 2020, they quite literally bent the knee. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer,
Oh, what's up,
the
Gaines?
entire Democrat
Did you watch
caucus
Phoenix?
in Congress literally bent the knee to
No,
George
not
Floyd
not
and
yet.
to Black
I think
Lives-
I'm
quite
planning on
literally
watching
did
it
that in
tonight. I
Florida.
think
That was a bad thing.
the weekend's been a bit rough. I had to work a lot. I had to work. Actually, the I think it was like a 10-hour day on Saturday. But what's it called? The car got vandalized on Saturday, so mostly been dealing with that for the last day or two.
I think it was a stupid thing. I
Why?
think it was just ridiculous pandering
So
to
Black
a
lives do not
terrorist
matter?
movement ran by.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Black lives do not matter?
I do
Yeah.
think that Black Lives Matter. I don't support the movement known as Black Lives Matter.
Do you ever say all
Doesn't-
lives matter?
Of course. As a Christian, I
There it
absolutely
is.
believe
All lives matter.
Absolutely.
Well, let me put this back into some.
Wait, why do you are you they should have asked him, do you identify as a Christian American? How much do you want to bet he would defend identifying as a Christian American, but would absolutely deride people for identifying as Asian American or Black American or whatever?
More concrete terms. So I guess to try to understand the conflict here that you guys are having, what role do you think Asian
White guy also like killing each other. Why do you think we made nukes to kill each other while Africa are still using spears? First of all, the nukes haven't even been used on white people. Historically, the nukes have been used on, well, the people who would be the subject of this video. But also, I have no idea what you're talking about. Humans have always created weapons to basically kill each other because resource scarcity, and like over time, obviously the amount of how many times we've been killing each other has gone down century over century over century as we build these things called societies. So it's the very strong argument I have for building societies as opposed to living as nomadic tribes constantly hunting each other.
Asian Americans have as far as the larger injustices and racism that this country has exhibited and has pushed it forward in the 200 years prior to even our arrival. But I guess the easiest way to make it something to talk about is the concept of the model minority myth. When you hear that word, what does it mean to you?
So the model minority myth, after World War II, they used us to separate other people of color.
Mostly they would mostly call that racist because of the idea that Africans are still using spears. I don't know if you know this, but there's like quite a lot of like, if I remember correctly, there's like quite a lot of arms deals that go on in Africa. The continent of Africa is no less what's the word saturated with guns than anywhere else. Like they use firearms in Africa. Let's not play into what's the word I'm looking for? What's the era? Like 1820s stereotypes of Africa. Africa is aside from certain sections, a mostly modern society, mostly made up of modern societies.
Used our race to say
Not
that
first
we were
world,
the best
but
race,
modern.
that we were the model minority because we were the smartest, we got the best jobs, we did these things.
I need
and
to
we
know
were
where
able
this
to
dude went to the
assimilate
gym.
what their idea of what they wanted an example to use of people of color that they could then use against all the other people of color. And
Makes
what
sense.
they also did is they caused infighting between our
This dude even
communities
dresses
that we
like
would look at
Charlie.
the actual problem, which was white supremacy. When I think of the model minority myth, I grew up wanting to be white. I fucking hate that about myself. Like, it is so embarrassing.
Okay, so statistically, it is true that Asians, right, on average,
This
make more
dude
money,
never-
like in terms of medium, make more money, better test scores, get into better colleges, all that stuff. I think the question is, why is that? And I don't know if model minority, whatever that label wants
That's
to mean.
actually a myth because we cannot be.
Well, no, listen. Well, let me finish my point. We need to observe.
Yeah, let him finish,
what
let him
makes
finish.
People successful and unsuccessful. And I think when you look at trends that are generally true in the Asian community, not of everyone, but are generally true, usually you have families that are sticking together. You have, people are taught to work hard in school, not get into.
Okay, so he's gonna say some more dumb shit, so let me tell you the actual answer. If you want to know why Asians succeed in the United States over, let's say, black people, it's rather simple. It's because Asian folks who came to America immigrated by choice and were able to build communities and also own businesses. Whereas, again, we'll take black people as an example. I don't know, black people labored under slavery and then had to live under Jim Crow laws in an entire subsection of the United States. And, you know, the civil rights movement, I don't know if you know this, but the civil rights movement only granted black people in the South the ability to live as an equal citizen to white people back in 1964. You know, Asian Americans have been like building communities and not been beset upon by actual systemic targeting the same way black people have. So that's, you know, that's just a small part of it. You know, it's really easy when like your families just come over, immigrate, own businesses, build communities, and aren't constantly targeted and also weren't considered property. Like, it's really easy when you start like a lot of times we describe like the American, like the way America kind of developed as kind of a bit of a race, right? White people got here, started from zero, were able to move forward as like, you know, just from the creation of the country, right? Asian folks came over, they weren't like, you know, equal in the same way. They worked like super shitty jobs, building the railroads, doing a lot of other things. But, and this is a big part, they weren't property. They didn't live under Jim Crow. They were discriminated against because of racism, but like eventually they grew and built their own communities and societies that were able to thrive. Like when black people did this in, I want to say it was the God, wait, let me be super accurate with what's it called? There it is. Okay. Is it Tulsa? No, I just want the fucking street. I'm assuming, okay, yes, I want black. Yeah, Tulsa Race Massacre. Yeah. So in Tulsa, Oklahoma, like, I'm not sure if anybody's aware of this, but like, black people in Tulsa, Oklahoma built their own like actual thriving city. Like, let's see if I can find some pictures of it. Oh my God. Like, okay, here we go. Found it. This is what I wanted. Like, yeah, full blown. Like, you know, this was in the, I think, what was this, in the 20s? If I remember correctly, this was in the 20s. I could be wrong about the exact time frame, but like nice, like fully built up. Like, this looks as contemporary to the time and as modern a society as like you can get. And this was built in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? And then there was this whole thing called the Tulsa Race Massacre, where this is what they were left with. You see, it's really easy to like build community and have your you know, ethnic or racial group be able to thrive and assimilate when this doesn't happen to your fucking small town. Like, yeah, no fucking shit. Like, American history has not been incredibly kind, specifically to black people. There's kind of a very obvious reason why they haven't been able to succeed or what's the word? Thrive in the system that we have. Like, Mexican Americans also, at the end of the day, have a lot of the same advantages. They are, first of all, they come from the advantage of being very close to their home country, meaning that they could actually like resource trade to a decent degree. But like, one member can move up, try and start business, try to put roots down, while the rest of the family stays and then moves in later and everything else. And there's always little societies that you can build in communities, especially in like California. You see a lot of like Mexican American communities. Like, yeah, this is going to be a lot easier for them because they're building like social infrastructure. When this is what happens to your real life infrastructure, how do you think your social infrastructure is going to work out? Like what? You think there's you think black people just like, which I'm sure this guy does, just think black people are just bad at this whole thing called like succeeding in life? No. Like obviously there's more context to that. You can't just look at the numbers and be like, oh well obviously you know, we've just been you know, we've just, our families have stayed together. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, did this happen to your family? Did your family get murdered in this? Were they sold off? Did you have your family, your ancestors sold off to other families? Like, yeah, you're able to build generational wealth as well. Like, Jesus. Anyway, I know that's a big tangent, but let's move on.
To trouble. I think that translates to why Asians en masse are successful. And I don't think you have to be Asian or white for that matter to not have kids out of wedlock, not, you know, commit crime, not cause trouble or whatever.
Imagine, like, imagine thinking like your city being burned down because racist whites
that's so-called assimilation, having a nuclear
has less of a less of an impact than oh, you didn't get married.
Between assimilation and erasure.
Yes.
The way that you're kind of going about it seems like, okay, like, you know, of course, like.
True that. Remember, USA lost all wars against Asia
and
besides
I don't think
Japan.
there's a problem with being in community with people from different backgrounds. That's not the issue. It's also in.
You do realize that the nukes like weren't necessary at all, right? Peace talks had already begun by that point. Asians are way better than most races in the world by honor and stricter family structure. You know, I'm not even going to address that last part.
Embracing the diversity that we inherently have and accepting that and being okay with that and celebrating that.
That's very idealistic, I think, but I think we should acknowledge the fact that diversity, quote unquote, is not a factor that is our strength. It's not a factor that historically or even in the current strengthens societies. People don't come together, form societies.
We're the most diverse country in the fucking world, and we're the richest and most powerful. Tell me how it hasn't worked out. Honestly. He said, like, not our strength. It's funny you say that because we have all of those things and somehow we're the strongest.
Form families, form communities because they have nothing in common. They come together and do those things because they have something in common, right?
Stop saying nothing in common.
Black and white terms. The way you talk about it is it's either with America, whatever your definition of America, or not. You're talking in very black and white terms, and that's actually the problem in discussing race because we're Asian Americans. We're neither black, we're neither white. When you're having a race discussion, you can't be talking about in such like lines. Yeah. Everything is in the gray.
The more in common that a society has with one another, the more likely they are to work together and build things in society and not constantly be fighting each other and at odds with each other.
Did you think the Japanese internment was a good thing? Because that was a real assimilation situation. You know what I mean?
No, I
recognize
don't.
that the term assimilation has negative
bad point.
History and facts associated with that word. So we do have to be careful in how we choose, because assimilation,
Japanese internment camps, cringe,
have not been good to us historically. That's factual. So let me ask you.
We're discussing the model minority myth.
But Japanese internment is a classic example of assimilating Asian Americans.
No,
so
it's not. It's a classic example of internment. I mean, they intern people.
Why?
Yes.
Why did they intern them? Because they saw them as other. Because they saw them as dangerous.
Not really. Well, yes, they saw them as dangerous because, and I don't agree with it, but left-wing president FDR at the time saw it as a national security risk.
So you're a Republican, right? You're right-wing.
Incorrect.
Right?
Which was an incorrect take. A very rare FDR-L.
I think there's a lot to unpack. Joyce, tell me.
You know what I want to find out? Japanese American restitution after internment camps. In 1987, Japanese Americans received, quote, a formal national apology and restitution of $1.2 billion to more than 66,000 survivors of the internment camps. Now, not that I think that actually covers the damages of the Japanese internment camp policy, but that might play a little bit of a factor, considering to this day we have had no retributive. Wait, that's not a word. Retribution? No, wait. Wait, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the verb tense? Wait, is that past verb tense? Past verb tense. What's the word I'm thinking of? Maybe I'm thinking of a word that doesn't exist. But my point is, to this day, we have not addressed even come close to any kind of, I'm thinking reparations. I don't know why I said whatever the fuck I was saying. We have had no kind of reparations, even conversation in terms of like, I don't know, slavery and like the failures of Reconstruction. Like we haven't addressed any of these things. But for Japanese Americans, there was at least some kind of reciprocity given to them. So when you're asking me like, oh, like why do Asian Americans do so well or Japanese, like, oh, I don't know. It could be because like within 30 years of internment of like Japanese internment camps, we like, I don't know, actually like spent some money to like heal those wounds. Probably not enough in my opinion. If I saw the numbers, I'd probably be like, that doesn't cover it, but something at least. We haven't done fucking anything. Black people did not get their 30 acres and a mule after fighting the fucking Civil War or any of this shit. So like, if anything, there was payments made out to fucking plantation owners because we seized their property after the war. Like no shit, no shit, like fucking Jesus.
Tell me about your feelings about the model minority myth. What does it make you think about?
For me, like, I don't think race should be an issue in anything. Like, when we want to make a decision, we should not put race as a factor. Living in New York City, we're the melting pot of the world, so I haven't actually experienced any of these biases. And if we keep continuing to live on
fucking based as shit,
we're never gonna move further. So I identify myself as
this is what
American,
happens.
and
This dude lives in Florida and probably lives in like a gated community.
A homeless person can be a millionaire the next day. So based on capitalism, we all have an opportunity, and we should not.
Okay. Off Tam, I'll address this since this is a often argued point. Every race was in slavery to one point. It happened. Let's just not repeat again and move on. Well, that's a really nice concept. Unfortunately, when we're talking about how we organize and the biases that lay at the structures of the society that we live in, we can't just do the like, oh, well, every race has been enslaved by somebody at some point. Like if we're gonna start history, let's be really let's be like really charitable to your side of this. If we start history at 1776, white people have full freedom. The Irish and the Italians aren't quite here yet, and Asians aren't here yet, but black people are here and their property, right? White people, for the most part, get to live full lives, get to own things, get to develop generational wealth over the course of the, what have we been around for? 17, 18, 19, 20, what are we at? Like 300 years and some change? Like 350 maybe? Over the course of this time, black people went from property to second-class citizens, and only in the last less than 100 years, we're not even at the 60-year mark yet, are they full 100% equal citizens under the law everywhere in America. Now, you tell me, does it sound like, even if we're just starting from the start of American history, does it sound like everyone's gonna have the same outcomes, that everyone's had the same chance to succeed in our society? Or does it sound like, and let me also be clear, again, this isn't like a because white people better, this is because white people just happen to be the ones here, but does it sound like white people got ahead by the simple arithmetic that they were on the top at the beginning and created the structures to stay like that? Because why wouldn't you? Is it not obvious that, like, as in the amount of time that all that happened, the Irish came in, the Italians came in, and the Asians came in, all faced mild discriminations, but two of those groups eventually got rolled into what is colloquially referred to as white American identity, and one faced mild discrimination, actually pretty tough discrimination in the beginning, but was able to still build generational wealth, still build communities, societies, like, sub-societies within the country, and were able to thrive here, and eventually became a what's the word I'm looking for? The model citizen or the model non-white group that did pretty well under the system, that did all right. See, you know, the system's doing all right. These folks made it all right. I mean, you know, we didn't target them like we targeted black people, but, you know, I mean, they did all right. They said, you know, with the least amount of targeting, Asian Americans did the best. Is that shocking? Is it really? Is it really shocking that that Irish and Italian Americans caught up with their more Germanic heritage, or even you know, like EU heritage Americans by the time, you know, the Asians kind of caught up as well? Like, obviously getting rolled into the white hegemon of an identity is going to be good for your group. Like, is that so hard to believe? I'm assuming it might be, but, you know, just so you understand, like, even if we're starting from just the beginning of America, it's rather obvious that everybody started from very different points, and that has led to very different outcomes, even though there's no evidence that black people work any less, that Asian people work any more. It's simply what your work and how effective it is in your society, you know? Oh, Jesus Christ. What is this? Why should I pay when I never did it, and when my family never owned slaves and fought for the North and worked in the dockyards? Why should I pay when I never did it? Are you talking about slavery? You do understand that every single person, me included, in American society has benefited from the exploitation of black labor under slavery? You understand that, right? Like, the foundational wealth that was grown by the unpaid labor of black people in this country was able to put us ahead of a lot of other countries in terms of our wealth accumulation, in terms of building the nation. Like, it's like we're all benefiting from it. Everybody does. Black Americans do. The only difference is they haven't been able to reap the benefits of that labor for their group. They're the one group that never benefited from building the country up the same way everybody else has.
Use race as a factor in either getting ahead or depriving ourselves of opportunities.
I have a question directly related to the fact that you live in New York, right?
Yeah.
And you're Asian women. There have been significant high crimes towards Asian women that were all over the news. Did that affect you? And what were your thoughts on that?
The government is telling us that it's Asian hate, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is actually that these people were mentally ill and they were let out.
Or both can be the issue, right?
Yeah,
it can
You have a nice night.
simultaneously exist as issues.
You can't say that it's Asian hate and use that as propaganda.
Propaganda?
I feel like also to just say that these people are mentally ill is a kind of an ableist argument too, because there's plenty of people who are mentally ill who are not going out and killing like Asian people on the street.
All these attacks that you're seeing the videos of in San Francisco, New York City, newsflash, they're not being prosecuted as hate crimes. So the more correct way to look at it is
I mean, if the police have no evidence that they're based on race and that they're just crimes of the moment, then yeah, they're not hate crimes.
Is what is the primary perpetrator of violence against Asians overall, right? Because if we talk about these videos, we have to count them in the statistics, and we're not doing that. And when we do that, we find, well, I'll tell you this, the plurality...
This dude is such a fucking NPC.
Of violence against Asians, number one, is not happening in rural America, and number two, is not being done by white people.
Those are black people that
Right, because rural America generally has lower populations, which means they're going to have lower crime rates. They also have a lot less diverse communities, which means you're going to see a lot less instances of cross-racial violence.
are doing it? Like, is it the black and brown people who are doing it?
No, that's exactly
inherently violent? Like,
I'm
Just
not,
say it.
I didn't say that. All I
Why
said
beat
was,
around it? Just
all I
say it.
said-
if it's not white
all
people
I
or
said-
Asian people.
all
Yeah,
I
don't be a
said- all
coward.
I didn't say anything about inherently violent. All I said is that if
Well,
it's
now you did.
if it's
no one accused you of that, and now
if
you did.
it's a white-
So like your
No, no,
bias
no.
is slipping out
It's
there.
Can
clear
anyone let
you
me
wanna
talk here?
say it. You should
Can
just
anyone let
say
me
it.
talk here?
When it comes to Asian hate, the perpetrator is not a white supremacist in New
Correct.
York.
That's all I'm saying.
So that's the
all
problem.
that I'm saying.
Like, we don't want to blame one race for violence when that's actually not true.
Is it white people? Is it white people?
It is white people.
Also, would you like to know the predictor of violent crime? What the absolute most effective predictor for violent crime is? It's poverty. Would you like to know the group that most fits into the poverty lines more than any other? It's black people. It's not really all that hard.
These attacks
It
happening
is white
in
people.
rural-
I literally looked up statistics.
You do not have to be white to perpetuate white supremacy. No one's saying it's not hard to govern a heterogeneous society. But it
Also,
is
if you want to
possible
talk
do a lot better
about
than the way the
anti-Asian
fucking
rhetoric,
right now. It's like,
anti-Asian rhetoric also comes from like white Republican politicians. If we're talking about like rhetoric.
we've banked on this myth of white adjacency more than this model minority myth of like, instead of aligning ourselves with the black community who've been fighting for racial justice and liberation, right? And acknowledging our own privilege and putting our bodies on the line to fight for these movements. Instead, we banked on white adjacency, and here we are still being pushed.
Yes.
into
What
subways.
is, okay, first of all, what exactly is white adjacency? Is it working hard, having families?
I didn't- no,
having,
no.
Are
I don't
those
understand the
things-
issues. But then number two, wait, let me finish my point.
Imagine
I
thinking
think it is
working hard and
gaslighting
having
when,
families
again, the
were
majority of violent
traits
attacks
of
against
white
Asians
people.
are not being perpetrated by white people to blame white supremacy.
White supremacy as a construct is this idea like that the norm of American is whiteness.
Yes.
That whiteness is the default.
Standard.
That whiteness is the standard that we all ought to aspire to. And we
It's
deviate
not just
from
talking about KKK.
Yeah.
It's not talking about lynchings. It's about a mentality that we have
otherizing.
absorbed.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second. Yuling, what's going through your head right now?
Model minority myth, if I'm not wrong, I actually think that Asian Americans did create that first and foremost to push the notion that we are dangerous away. First to say that like, no, we belong here because I promise you we will not cause harm to you. And that has trickled down now into becoming almost a curse. Historically was used first to be like, we're not dangerous, we're American, we are American. But later on it has moved into this sort of weaponized term slash almost like idea concept where we get to say like, oh, because we are model minority, like we're not like dangerous and we're not this. And I think about this a lot with class, like a lot of Asian women who are sex workers. Who are we actually taking into account when we think about model minority? And I think that that term really applies to a very specific amount, or that idea of what that looks like is very specific. Because when I think of the Asian Americans that I know, I don't think that they're worried about whether or not they look like model minority. I think they're just trying to survive.
Vish, I see you percolating over there. What's going through your brain?
I don't understand why everybody's so hurt about like being described as a model minority. For me, it's like, well, I want to be the best. I want to be the smartest. I want to be the toughest. The model minority thing, I've never thought about it because I'm too focused on trying to be a model American.
When I say the word stop,
The only real negative thing about, well, at least from an interpersonal level, the worst thing about the model minority myth is mainly because it's fitting you into a like it's fitting you into a box and an expectation that you don't really choose for yourself. I find it's mostly like, oh, we want you to be as good of a capitalist widget as you possibly can. That's like the worst thing about
Asian
it.
hate. What does it mean to you?
Scam.
I agree.
Why?
I see it as the same way as the BLM organization. It's just a cudgel meant to divide Americans on racialized language and racialized ideas that are not really congruent with reality. The Stop Asian Hate movement, makes a big fuss about white supremacy. So I find that to be a scam in a similar way that BLM makes a boogeyman out of cops and white people and white supremacy and all that. It's all the same language and all the same sort of ideas that are being used to divide Americans and basically put Asians.
The problem I always have with this, which I like totally sympathize, and I've heard this from regular people, and it's like it's absolutely a thing that people are like, I just don't like people. People in the regular world will be like, I don't know, there's like always a million different things that are going on. There's like this or that group that's being oppressed by this or that, and I just don't see any of it. And like that mostly comes at the fault of these groups not communicating in a way that I think is going to reach a lot of these people. A lot of it I attribute to like activism speak, which, you know, I have a lot of respect for activists, but there is a certain amount of, I think, terminology and a certain amount of like way of communicating that activists generally sometimes kind of outpace like any regular person. It's like fair. Like if you sat down with this dude and explained everything, he'd probably be like, okay, now I get it. But if he doesn't have somebody in his life that's willing to do that, it's really hard to like get that nuance.
In fear of something that I personally do not think exists.
Who agrees with Vish?
No, I don't.
Raise your hands up high. Let's hear it. Why?
I mean, I agree with everything he says because they're basically weaponizing it and making us victims, but we're not victims. We have friends that are of different races. If you start to use the word hate, hate will continue. Hate is a very strong word.
So even when it's stop Asian hate, you're still like, wait, it has Asian hate in here, and we should not even consider it as a
It's
serious
divisive.
thing?
Well, it's referring to murders, people getting attacked in broad daylight, elders getting bashed in the head. I fear for my mother-in-law going on walks. I ask her to make sure she's not walking around when it's getting dark. So it's very real. Getting murdered for being Asian is as hateful as it gets, is it not? Why are we afraid to just say out loud, let's stop Asian hate? It is happening in astronomical numbers. Studies have shown the increase. And where did it come from? Right after the COVID blast of people saying,
I'm glad she mentioned this. I was going to say there's a...
There was a direct correlation to that Asian hate. It just didn't.
The same way after 9/11 and Americans basically found their anti-Muslim bone. After COVID, there was a certain section of Americans that found their anti-Asian bone on after Trump and others were trying to tie COVID to basically a racial and ethnic group.
It didn't come out of thin air, so it really minimizes our experiences when you say it doesn't exist.
Here's a radical idea. Okay, you guys ready?
Oh no.
So there's a lot of violence happening.
Here's a radical
A lot of it's against Asian
fascist
people.
idea.
A lot of it is happening in cities. Crazy idea,
Right.
I know. Then
He's
maybe
gonna
it's not a
say
good idea
he's
to
gonna say
let
guns.
criminals out
He's
of
gonna say
jail.
guns.
Maybe it's not a good idea to defund the police, neuter the police ability to have
Hasn't
any degree
happened.
of law and order in our streets.
Hasn't happened.
And maybe you wouldn't have so much violence happening against so many different types of vulnerable people. I mean, this is just the truth of the situation.
More
we can
cops,
talk
more
about its
cops,
correlation with
more
COVID. Maybe
cops,
that's true to
more
an extent.
cops.
It's also true
Wait, so
that
maybe that's true to an extent. What do you mean?
because it's also true that it's been climbing over the past year or two, whatever. That's also around the same time that we had all of these, anti-police movements. A lot of
But
it
it's also around the
translated
same
into policy.
time that Donald Trump was calling it the China virus, right?
Well, he's not calling it anymore, and it looks like this stuff is
I love that. I love that.
still happening. Problem with saying stop Asian hate and us just saying stigma, whatever, is that it misses the real core of the problem. The real core of the problem is that there is lawlessness and mass violence and mass crime happening in cities. I think that the Stop Asian Hate movement comes from woke left-wing social movement to kind of make it into this argument of like
This dude is such a fucking NPC. He's, oh my god, he's such a fucking NPC. Like, okay.
minorities being persecuted when I don't think that's the core of the problem. I think the core of the problem is like, it's just dangerous in our cities.
Originally, when you asked what Stop Asian Hate means to you,
Okay, let's be clear. The only thing he's right about is that specifically in California, there is a I believe it's like the DA of Los Angeles. I don't know about San Francisco specifically. But the DA of Los Angeles started kind of winding down the severe sentences for certain crimes, which has resulted in a uptick of violent crime because it's just not getting prosecuted, which is not good. But if you want to talk about like, when we talk about like crime, you have to keep in mind that like crime is always going to be higher in cities because it's a higher concentration of humans. And when you have a higher concentration of humans, you're going to have a higher raw number of violence. It's really just a game of percentages.
the first word that popped in my mind was ignorance. It goes beyond more about.
Also, I could be wrong, but San
more than the way that
Francisco,
people were
a
just,
lot
like,
of the crime in San
acting out
Francisco
and
is
attacking people.
vagrant.
Some people were
Is
avoiding other people. Some people were like,
vagrantism
oh, no,
is
you can't
like
go over to that house
homelessness.
because they're Asian, they're Japanese, they're Chinese. So that also is a version of hate. So like before we go too far into like the specifics of like crime, there was even just, you know, social injustices, and that is one of the things that I think that people might overlook.
Yuleng?
In regards to just the term Stop Asian Hate, the reason why I feel like it falls short is not because of the sentiment. I think that there is definitely prejudice and absolutely like hate against Asians in this country. But I think sometimes that we view that violence very like specific, like I'm gonna beat you up because you're Asian, and like that is the violence. And I think sometimes like on a larger scale, that violence also shows up in ways in which like housing, education, healthcare.
Fucking base.
And so now let's move on to the main event, because a lot of what's behind
Oh
the
wait,
disagreements
we're
that
not
having
at the
today
main
seems to be
event.
related
Oh
to
man.
politics.
Oh
How many
man.
of you here would say that you're progressive or liberal? Raise of hands. And how many would say conservative or not progressive and liberal? Undecided? Okay. Are Asians
I feel like they should have done
invisible
the
in
like
American politics? Are they visible?
independent.
Do Asian Americans
Most people are
have political
independents.
power? Let's take visibility.
Not visible enough. But that is a consequence of the mentality towards politics for a lot of Asian.
Wait, but you can't. Whoa, wasn't this guy arguing that like you didn't need the like demographic categorization? Like, yeah, like if you understand, like, okay, we're just gonna let's just
you
move
don't
on.
participate in the system.
We know.
Nobody's gonna care what you have to say. Period. Which is why I've made it a point to participate in the system. You know, I don't go around saying, "Well, I'm Asian, that's why I deserve to be here." But just me being in the room,
You do deserve
is
to be
a
here.
step above what's
Not 'cause you're
kind of
Asian, you're
the
just-
sort
that's
of
just
awareness, the
incidental.
political awareness of specifically the Indian community, in my opinion. You know, that's been my experience. So I don't think that
I
they're
forget where this
visible
guy's
enough,
from now.
and
Damn it.
the reason they're not visible is because they don't participate and do the work behind it. Is
That
my
engagement.
And why would that be? I wonder.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that in terms of, I think it's more than that, but I do agree as lack of engagement or, you know, claiming to be apolitical. I think when Kamala became vice president, there wasn't really that much support that I saw from the Asian community. And she's our first Asian American woman to be elected.
This is what happens when like you believe in when like your political movement is primarily or at the very least like has a tendency to embrace identity politics but not embrace actual like diversity of opinion in terms of its political ideology. Kamala Harris has the politics of Hillary Clinton. It's why she's not interesting to Asians and Pacific Islanders. Like she's just not interesting. She speaks for none of the topics that they care about, none of their interests. She's milquetoast. She's not interesting at all.
Elected in such a high position of office.
Yeah.
So where is the support? Just because
She doesn't do
may not
anything.
look
No,
a
fuck
specific
that.
way.
So what
No,
you're
fuck
saying is
that. No, fuck
the
that.
broader Asian
Make her
American
come to
community,
you.
which might include East
Don't give her
Asians
support.
otherwise,
Make her do some
didn't
shit
speak
for
up
you.
enough
Fuck
for
that.
having a South Asian person like Kamala Harris of mixed race become vice president of the United States. So
Yeah.
divisions within itself.
Yes. Like I did not see very many East Asians come out and be like, you know, Asian American representation. But I saw plenty of Black people come out and be like, Black representation.
Yeah.
You know, so there is definitely a lot of divisiveness. within
Obama
our own communities
leans
that
a
we need to-
lot
we need to
heavier into his
understand and recognize.
blackness
Being
than
Asian is not just being East
than
Asian.
Kamala
Maybe
does.
Asians didn't feel represented by Kamala Harris. Maybe people just don't
Fuck!
like Kamala Harris. Like
We
she's
agree.
one of the least popular vice presidents, I believe, in like recent history. I don't know if it's like an Asian exclusive thing. I just think a lot of people
Why don't
were
you
not
think
a
they?
fan.
Why don't you think they like her?
She comes off as
'Cause she's
obnoxious
fucking
and pretentious,
cringe.
and they don't like her politics.
Can I piggyback off that? I think
Yeah,
Kamala
she's got
Harris
cringe
does not
politics.
get the love from the Asian community because she picks and chooses when she wants to be whatever her
God
identity is. When
damn
she's
it.
on TV, on camera.
He's
you
right.
know, I'm a Black woman. Blah,
He's
blah, blah,
right.
blah. But she
He's
only
right.
claims her Indian and Asian background when she's in the fundraisers with the rich Indians. She's
Not
doing
tonight,
it to
Gaines.
herself.
Thursday,
She's dividing
Thursday
her
maybe, but not
identity
tonight. I'm
by
pretty much finishing up with
playing
this, and then I gotta
code
run.
Switching. I know AOC likes to use the word code switching. Code switching to the Black community when she's on camera.
Well, yeah, it's 'cause
and
when
then
you code switch,
switching
yeah.
To the Asian community when she's raising money.
It's like
Don't
super
be
a thing.
surprised if you only come around when you're asking for a check and then we're not in the streets, you know, as hard as you would like us to be. But then again, you don't go on camera wearing a dot on your head and the jasmine in your hair, right? And wearing a sari. Show me a picture of Kamala in a sari.
Damn.
Right? When was the last time? I've seen Justin Trudeau wearing Indian clothes before her. You know what I mean? So don't give me the nonsense, right? Like, it's her.
Real question, Gaines. What'd you get on that pizza? We talking pineapple? We talking pepperoni? Cheese? What are we talking? Sausage? Feta? Mushrooms? Anchovies? Maybe?
Her fault that Asians don't get behind her.
Jeez.
For her trying to win
Kosher.
over
Oh, yeah, that's
people,
right,
do
yeah.
you think that maybe as a choice,
Cheese is
to not
kosher.
represent that to be more?
Is all cheese kosher, or do you need to get cheese? Because isn't like kosher, it has to be like prepared a certain way, yeah? Like, is all cheese kosher? Or is it like their cheese is kosher? But yeah. I'm not doing it tomorrow just because Valentine's Day, but Thursday, yeah. We'll figure something out. Email me. We'll pick a time. But we have to do like a closed segment. Like we're gonna stick to a closed time period. Or at least I'm gonna attempt to. I always try to, but usually I like talking for too long and ramble on.
Relatable to the masses could be the reason why she acts the way that she acts. I don't know.
Are you saying Asians are not relatable to the American public?
Yes, to some, yeah.
Damn, my dude just went out there and said it, and he's not wrong. All dairy outside of things that come from abuse is kosher.
Standard American
Cool,
is supposed to be, and then all of a sudden, depending on the social climate, there is a lot of pressure on people to be a specific person. And so when you're someone in that light, trying to get support from different people, not even saying that she's right or wrong, I'm just saying that could possibly be a motive.
She did it to herself. If you just called yourself American, you wouldn't be in this mess.
I think,
But you switch the identity based on the need. And that is the problem.
It's disingenuous. He's not wrong.
Politically
And
expedient.
you kind of saw this when Biden shows her. She exists to basically appeal to like the woke diversity mob. Like, that's the truth. Biden said, I'm going to.
Is that true? Is she? Because she's not popular with the left, who's the most, in this guy's terms, woke and diversity pilled. So is she? Is she, or is she just popular with donors? This is what happens when your critical political tool is broken. It's rather obvious. Kamala Harris does incredibly well with wealthy donors. It's why she's in the position she's in. Not because she's popular with black folks. She's popular with any of the, because she's not with any of these groups. Who she's popular with are wealthy donors. And, you know, she's got the skin tone to kind of give Joe Biden a little bit of an excuse, or at the very least enough cover to not be, be as racist as he probably is slightly. You know, Uncle Joe said some sketchy stuff on the back in the 60s and 70s.
And I just think that a lot of people outside of Ivy League educations find that stuff off-putting. In general America, a lot of people of all different colors are very off-put by her.
If we ever make AI with free will and consciousness, is it unethical to terminate it?
Black people,
nonsense.
after off-put by a woman in leadership.
Is it unethical to terminate it? Let's see. AI. At the very least, under my moral and ethical framework, I would probably say, I'd probably say, yeah. I'd probably say that's unethical. Yeah. Yeah. Uncool. Certainly uncool.
I want to chime in here.
Apparently,
it's an interesting conversation.
Women of color and black women, even like
as we talked about.
It also doesn't help that I've been playing Cyberpunk, so like
let's get off the
thinking about that as well.
I want to hold on one point of yours, which is she's a token. That's what I heard from you.
Sure, I think Biden chose her absolutely as a token.
Yeah,
so I want to know
I'd agree with that.
Respond to sort of what Vince was saying, that Kamala Harris effectively was a token pick because demographic boxes, and specifically an Asian American demographic box.
I feel like anytime a person of color gets chosen, we're looked at as a token, especially in
Sadly,
institutions.
yeah.
It's historical, like it's new to us, right? So in one sense, there's some truth to it. Even in our own communities, I think, is she a token? Like, we second guess ourselves. You start to second guess, are you worth it? Because you're constantly being questioned.
Qualified?
Did you get here because you were diversity higher, or, this is the existence that we live in right now. And so Kamala Harris is actually very representative of what we face. You can say token all day long, but you can't take that away.
People will scrutinize her. However, what about the other people, other 47 presidents who've definitely done their fair share? I'd say probably worse things.
Yes, absolutely.
Who are not nitpicked for what they are wearing, or like maybe not fitting in enough because they already fit in.
Or for being white.
Oh yeah, that's misogyny. Yeah,
Get another white person.
that's just misogyny. Yeah.
A lot of people don't agree with
Hillary Clinton gets that flack too.
And, like, I don't want to take like her credentials away.
Yeah.
Because she earned it. She wasn't just a diversity pick. She was picked because she also
put in the work.
She also put in the.
I would. Okay, so here's the thing. Do I think Kamala Harris is qualified in terms of her like quantitative like attributes to be like the president or vice president? Absolutely. If you're asking me, does she have a like, do I want Kamala Harris as president? No, because Kamala Harris doesn't have a vision for America. Like, I don't want the person leading my country to just be like, oh yeah, they like went through the proper channels or were a lawyer for a bit and like did some other shit. I want people with a vision, with an ideology, with a desire to change the country and to mold it in a fashion that they think is best for the most amount of people. I want somebody to come in and be like, I want to create an egalitarian society or as close as we can get to one. Because like, that's like why would you want somebody who's just like, I don't know, I just want to be president. The presidency is not about like what you want and you just padding your resume, you just garnering a title. Like, I want presidents and like vice presidents who want to do things with their position, and Kamala Harris doesn't seem to be that interested in doing anything with her position. Just simply the fact that she is president seems like it's enough for her, and I don't know, that's just not that. It's not that commendable, honestly.
The work.
I'd like to hear from the women in the panel about the specifics that we're talking about, because not only is she the first Black and Asian American vice president, she's also the first woman. Choice.
I disagree with Kamala's politics, I'll say it, but at the same time, she's representative of a woman, and I think we should give her some award for that. Like,
credit?
I like credit, yes, that's the word that I was looking for. This is my point exactly with playing identity politics. Like, who cares if she's Black? Who cares if she's a woman? Like, if she got there on her own merit, that's what's
Wait, then why do you want to give her credit for being a woman?
Her being a token
Okay.
so much. I
Normies.
think I'm more interested in, well, what will you do now that you're in office? Will things still change, or is it
what would
optics?
that
Thank
look
you.
like?
Yeah, and it's great because obviously you do want the optics. You do hope, and you put a lot of that pressure on that person who you feel might represent you. If I wanted to talk really about representation, I'd be like, put somebody poor up there. I don't want anybody rich
Fuck yeah.
running the government.
Fuck
Sorry,
yeah.
but you know what I mean? It's just kind of like.
If we're talking about an actual representative American, get somebody who makes like 40K,
Let's talk about
50K a
higher
year.
Education and affirmative action. So I think a lot of our conversation, the rubber hits the road on this topic. And because plaintiffs challenging affirmative action rules, there are Asian Americans who are banding together to do that.
I think affirmative action is a scam. It's an excuse to make race-based hiring decisions. And I think that that's wrong. And I think that everything should be based on merit.
The students that are picked by affirmative action are top tier students.
Yeah.
They're not like some D+ students that are getting picked just based on race. They already are performing at a very top level themselves and proven themselves to be picked.
Despite systemic barriers.
I think to a reasonable extent, you could say, okay, if someone grew up in like total poverty and they didn't have the same opportunities, then you can lower the standard a little bit. What I would still say is I think.
Wait, so you mean reality? Like this? Okay, so we're talking about reality, where people grow up in like wildly disparate, world spawn points, basically. So okay, so reality, got it.
There has to be some proof still of capability. Right now, there's a left-wing movement to remove SAT and standardized testing. So, in my opinion,
Yeah,
sure,
'cause
the SAT
they're-
may not be a perfect test. I
they're-
think it's
they're-
decent. That
we've
is what
found that
actually levels the
standardized
playing field to say,
testing
we have to take the same
is
test.
actually
It doesn't
not
matter
very
what,
good.
What your teacher, how hard they grade, you pay them off, private school education. You know, that's the environment where it's like totally even.
Sure.
No, it's not. Because if the test doesn't change depending... Okay, so basically setting the bar and being like, okay, the bar is set here for everybody, right? Like, you have to just jump over this bar right here, right? The level of your education, if you live in a good neighborhood, you might get this high. If you live in a better neighborhood, this high. If you live in an average neighborhood, this high. But guess what happens when your local school gets defunded and your teachers are either low quality or don't have the resources to teach you well? You're down here. You're down here. You're over here. Like, the SATs and other standardized tests do not take into the account the funding and the access to equal education that we don't have in this country. We can't have equal testing without equal without equal access to education. Like, that's not, these two things, you need both of them to be equal, to be, like, to even make sense. Obviously, anybody who grows up in, I don't fucking know, rich neighborhood, in fucking, I don't know, give it somebody, what's a rich neighborhood? Okay. Cherry Creek is a rich neighborhood in the, like, Denver suburbs. If you grow up in Cherry Creek, going to Cherry Creek schools, you are almost certainly, there is almost no way you will do worse than somebody going to, like, Aurora Public Schools, because Aurora Public Schools have been defunded and are usually not very well maintained, mainly because of the way we fund schools through housing taxes. So if you live in a rich neighborhood and you have your housing taxes being the thing that funds your school, guess what? You're going to have a nice school. And if you live in a broke neighborhood, you're going to have a shitfuck school. So obviously, there's a bit of a discrepancy there. Like, you need to equalize educational access before you can say that a standardized test is a meaningful benchmark for educational acumen.
Or it's one way to measure intelligence, but that's also assuming that intelligence can only be assessed in one way. How do you compare someone who is just as smart?
Also,
or,
the test
maybe
can't change,
if they didn't
but
get
for the SAT,
score
if you
as,
can
like,
do,
your
if you can
classmate
pay
who
for
literally
prep,
paid a
you will
tutor for
always do
4
better than
years.
somebody who can't pay for prep. The
versus
thing
this
that,
person,
like,
they took
the
the
thing
test
that's
twice in their life,
determinative
and
of
then they put
your
a bunch of
score
their savings into
is the
paying for
prep,
the
is the
test.
money. You can pay to
How are
win
you
in the
supposed
system.
to compare these people and say that one is more deserving?
So I think to level the playing
It's
field,
literally
like,
pay
we
to
need
win.
improve our local schools. Not every school
Absolutely.
is the same. Like, if you're in a poor community, you don't have the best teachers.
You have, like, shit schools.
We want to hold all the teachers accountable for giving top grade education so everybody's leveled. And then it wouldn't matter.
Teachers have
which
almost
race
nothing
or
to do with this.
socioeconomic position that you're taking. I don't agree
We're talking
with,
on a
like,
macro
getting
scale.
rid of affirmative action altogether. I think it needs reform.
What about, like, legacy kids? I think that it's great to take into account, you know, the systems in power that have intentionally made sure that certain people, and specifically Black and brown people, cannot have access to education. I think that's a great way to try to level that playing field at the least. If a kid
we
can
don't
get
see
in,
a fuss being made about legacy kids ever. When do you ever hear about that?
Exactly, it's that, like, people get a lot more up in arms, I would say, when it's like, oh, well, so you just got in because of your, you know, race.
What do you think the future of Asian
Not wrong.
Americans in America and American politics is?
The paradigm we are going through now, especially with our relations with different ethnic groups and everything, I think that we are headed towards balkanization, and the future of America is starting to look like Bosnia. And so
Doesn't this dude live in, like, New York? Does he think New York looks like
At
this?
least what I've seen, a lot more Asian Americans who are interested in politics, who are interested in bringing more representation and bringing more, saying, like, we've had
Dude, the
enough.
younger
You know, this
generations
is
are
not
so,
how we need to be treated, how
so
we
much
deserve to
more,
be
like,
treated. So, like, I think in terms of
diverse in terms of, like,
involvement, there will
opinion,
be
but
higher
also, like,
involvement of
who
Asian
they, like,
Americans, and
interact
also
with. There's,
the
like,
mere fact
the
that
whole
we
fear that it's
had
like,
Asian
oh, we're
American
gonna
representation,
have
whether it's
balkanization.
Kamala
We're gonna have.
or,
It's like, no,
Andrea
dude.
and
Like,
just
talk to young
running,
kids. Young kids don't give a fuck about
shows
race.
people that,
Most
hey,
young
like,
kids are like,
maybe,
yeah, I grew up with, like,
maybe that could be me.
black and brown people and white people and
I think
everybody
that
else
one of the
getting
biggest
getting
things that
along.
representation does is it says, I'm allowed to do that because I see someone that looks like me do that.
Yeah.
And I think just exactly what you said is that, you know, with Black Lives Matter, Asian hate, we learned that if we work together as people of color,
Yes.
and that's where I think,
Yes.
that's what it means to me, is that we as a group working together get more done.
Yes.
And that if we support each other and we do this, we can get more of ourselves up there.
I think you will definitely see some people who actually move to the
Every
right because
time.
of that. How big will it be? I don't really know. Probably not as
Probably
big
on the
as
older
a lot of
side.
Republicans hope, but I think it will happen.
That's certainly
What do I think
true.
about the future, I'm gonna be hopeful because I think that oftentimes, like, we are characterized as just angry, right? And then our politics.
My dude in the
and our
screen
politics
flannel is
isn't
my
rooted-
is a king.
Yeah. But and our politics isn't rooted in love and isn't rooted in community,
Yes.
isn't rooted in hope. And I hope that it is, right? And so what I'm hopeful about is that we can sit here and name politicians who look like us and sound like us.
Yes.
And that wasn't the case when I was a kid. I didn't think that was possible. So from where I'm sitting, like, I think the future of Asian American leadership looks like telling our own stories in community with other people who haven't had their stories told yet.
Just from seeing sort of the agitation within our own communities, I think just like with movements and like being tired of staying silent. I think that's part of going back to also that model minority myth of like, I'm gonna mind my business, I'm just gonna do my thing, and you guys just fight it out over there. You know, I think that like seeing the passion kind of jump out is very beautiful to witness. And so hopefully I think that the future, at least that I envision, is one where we can maybe see more humanity in each other. I think that as an Asian American, a lot of how I've viewed myself has been through a lens of self-hatred and shame. With the moment that we're in right now, even this conversation that we've been able to have, I think that the difference that I hopefully feel is that we're not gonna sit on the sidelines and be like, that's not my business. I think now we're ready to be like, that is my business, and I'm gonna be vocal about it. So I don't know what that looks like in the future, but I think that my hope is that it looks more like community care.
You know, white children in this country grew up with the mentality, I can be president one day. We didn't have that. and we're just now like, oh, could it be us? What I hear a lot in your reasons for being Republican or thinking the way you do is that you don't want to be seen as a victim. I see that, I hear that very loud and clear. And it's rooted in kind of that logic that pits you against yourself. That you constantly walk around with this idea, I'm not a victim. But it doesn't just end with you. We're
all
people
victims
that
of
come from
capitalism.
community. One of the things, even though we are not a monolith, a lot of our cultures can unite in the fact that we believe in community. And I know when people, you know, when we talk as passionately as we do, it sounds like we're complaining to some people, but we have seen progress and we know it's possible. So yes, we are hopeful that our children can even have it better than us.
To your point, you said, you know, you feel like in some situations I'm pitted against myself.
Next stream? What
You're
about next stream?
100% right. I am my number one competition, and I'm going to win because I am the representation.
I don't doubt that you're gonna win.
The conversation about representation, I got to see somebody who looks like me in order for me to believe. No, I am that guy. I am going to put.
Not everybody has your
gonna
belief.
put myself
Thursday.
I love
Thursday,
that.
7 o'clock, Mountain Time.
I'm going to be that representation. I'm that representation every day.
Guess what, guys? We were all that representation today. So thank you.
I don't know about all that. I don't know about all that.
For the passionate responses. You're gonna get a bunch of us in the room together. We're not gonna agree. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay. Well, that was fun. That was nice. Yeah, Daily Wire boys. Not shocked that they just lied to me. That dude got blown the fuck out. Okay. Well, all right. Cool. Well, that's been fun. Had a good time. You know the thing that they tell, you know, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.